Klein, Director Dettelbach, First Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Sal Dominguez, Director Robert Clark. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. You know, it's so great for us to be here today with federal law enforcement partners as we review and strengthen ongoing efforts to reduce violent crime and get illegal crime guns off the streets here in Columbus. We know that in 2022, we saw some very positive results. In fact, violent crime, homicides, and other violent crime dropped by more here than any other big city in the country. But despite that 33% reduction, nearly 90% of the homicides that did occur involved the use of a firearm. The same was true the previous year as well. At the same time, we're confronting the disturbing connection between gun violence and our youth. Of the 12 homicides that have occurred this year, 2 were committed by 14-year-olds. Shocking. Totally unacceptable. This is a tragedy, and we all must do more and do better to disrupt the status quo. This is a collaborative effort, which is why I'm so grateful to the ATF and all of our partners in federal law enforcement for the support they provided to the Columbus Division of Police and the City Attorney's Office as we've worked diligently over the years to make Columbus a safer community. But we cannot rest or yield. We must do everything we can and more to make our community safer and healthier. That's why today's meeting with the ATF director is so important. We're looking at what more we can do and how to get this work done as quickly as possible. Here's what we have planned to take our efforts to the next level, to continue bringing down violent crime in our community. First, we'll be devoting at least $5 million in this year's capital budget to purchase tools and technologies that expand our participation in the federal NIBIN program. For those who may not be aware, NIBIN automates ballistics evaluations and provides an actionable investigative leads in a timely fashion. This has been a great tool for us, and the ATF has made the NIBIN van and other resources available to us, which has helped us with our closure rates and getting violent criminals off the street. NIBIN is the only interstate automated ballistic imaging network in the United States. And by gaining additional resources, we'll be able to ensure the benefits of the NIBIN program are more readily available here locally all the time. It's one thing to catch up. We want to keep up and stay on offense, and we think this investment will help this. The second thing that the director and we have talked about today is investing $250,000 to hire 2 additional special assistant U.S. attorneys dedicated to prosecuting those committing these heinous crimes. City Attorney Klein will share additional details in just a few moments about that. And then finally, we're collaborating with the ATF and other law enforcement partners to create a regional crime gun intelligence center to further address violent gun crimes using a broader approach. Work on this initiative is already underway. We'll be sharing additional details as those plans are finalized in the coming weeks. But here is what we know. The vast majority of these crimes are being committed by an extremely small number of our local population. That, however, does not diminish our resolve. In addition to enforcement, there are prevention and intervention tactics and strategies as well, like youth programming, mental health and addiction services, which will soon be housed within the Office of Violence Prevention, a centralized clearinghouse that will streamline and coordinate the city's safety responses in a holistic fashion. Key to our success on all these fronts is having experienced and thoughtful leaders in positions of authority and influence, like Director Dettelbach at the ATF. His appointment was years in the making, and so proud that the U.S. Conference of Mayors and bipartisan leaders from around the country worked with U.S. senators to ensure his confirmation. I want to acknowledge former Senator Rob Portman, who was instrumental in making this happen, as well as Senator Sherrod Brown. Bipartisan, working together, putting community safety first. We felt his absence, to say the least. Cities need consistent reliable support to turn troubling crime trends around. We finally have that support now in Director Dettelbach, who's hit the ground running. He is here with us today to see firsthand all that is already underway and to weigh in on how we can expand or improve our efforts moving forward again, in lockstep with our law enforcement partners at every level. It is my pleasure to introduce our Director, Steve Dettelbach.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I want to thank you, Mayor Ginther, not just for inviting and having me to Columbus to meet with and see the great team that you have put together here to fight violent crime, but for your leadership throughout your years as mayor and in our region. And when I say our region, this is a place that's very special to me. I am director of ATF, but I have always been and always will be and am a Buckeye. And I'm happy to be in my home state of Ohio. Thank you to everybody up here on this stage and those others out there who are partnerships who came here to address and who constantly address the significant issues and challenges we're facing with respect to firearms violence. Everybody up here, from the city attorney's offices to the Columbus Police Department to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We have a wonderful U.S. Attorney's Office here. And those outside of this who are in the state and local law enforcement family across party lines, across regional lines, BCI, FBI. These are partners that are helping to work together to fight this problem of violent crime. Sadly, the problem has captured the attention of the nation constantly, and as recently as last weekend. Our thoughts, of course, all go out every time we see it to the victims and the families of victims who've been affected by the senseless and relentless shootings that we see, those in Monterey, California, in High Moon Bay, in Des Moines, Iowa, in Yakima, Washington, in Oakland, all across the country. And of course, we don't have to look that far. The tragedies are here too in Ohio that affect real families almost every day. And I want to begin by saying this. I agree with Mayor Ginther. The level of firearms violence across the United States of America is wholly unacceptable. And I'll go farther. I'll tell you, it is wholly un-American. It's not what we are about as a country. It's not who we are. And we should not a single one of us, become complacent to it. Accept it as just part of living in the United States. It is not part of being an American and living in the United States. We in law enforcement don't accept it. ATF sure as heck doesn't accept it, and neither should any one of you accept it. That's why, as director, working with the partners you see here, we are all committed as our #1 priority to double down on our commitment to public safety. Everything we do begins and ends with that, working to make the public safer. That means working side by side with our partners all throughout every level of government, our local law enforcement partners, our state law enforcement partners, every day fighting together to protect our communities. And tackling violent crime requires those kinds of partnerships, working together, like the one we have here with Columbus. And as the mayor said, hard work can bring results. I know people think things are tough, but hard work brings results. From 2021 to 2022, thanks to people here on this stage and those who work with them and for them, the number of fatal shootings in Columbus have fallen by 30%. And together, we are doing a better job at getting shooters and trigger pullers off the streets. The mayor is right. There is more we can do, and there is more we must do, but it starts with this unwavering partnership and commitment. At ATF, we try to do our part. Our efforts to support our law enforcement partners are twofold. First, we continue to do the things that have worked over the years, the tried and true investigative techniques that have taken the most violent criminals off the streets before. These are things like working on task forces together, targeting gang violence that is making some of our communities unsafe. But we supplement that with the second thing we do, which the mayor spoke about, which is crime gun intelligence. Now, what does crime gun intelligence mean? Crime gun intelligence means taking crime guns and squeezing every last bit of evidence that we now can with modern technology out of that firearm. That's evidence that comes out the front of the firearm when it fires, evidence that comes out when the expended cartridge casing is ejected out of the back, evidence on the outside, like the serial number and DNA, and evidence from the inside, like ballistics, from rifling and the bullet. And technology is allowing us to do more with that than ever. The first pillar of crime gun intelligence is exactly what the mayor said. It is NIBIN. NIBIN plays a crucial role in the immediate aftermath of a shooting. So take, for instance, a serial killer case in Stockton, California. It was ATF NIBIN tracing that tied multiple homicides together and helped police to catch the killer there. That's just not in California. Last year, here in Columbus alone, there were 3,700 investigated leads generated by NIBIN. That's 3,700 tips for hardworking detectives and agents on the street to find the shooter, to find the killer. The second pillar of crime gun intelligence is E-Trace. And E-Trace allows us to take a crime gun that is recovered at the scene of the crime and trace it to its first retail sale. So for instance, after a man opened fire on a subway in Brooklyn, New York, law enforcement recovered the firearm at the scene of the crime, and ATF traced that firearm, revealing who purchased it, and from there, law enforcement was able to use that information to catch the shooter. The same thing happened at the 4th of July massacre in Highland Park, Illinois, where that parade was shot on the 4th of July. An emergency trace allowed law enforcement to catch that shooter before he killed again. Now think about that here in Columbus, because here in Columbus, the data shows that 10% of the firearms used in crimes that law enforcement recovered and traced revealed that the time to crime, in other words, from when you buy the gun, the moment it's bought to the moment it shows up at a crime, was less than 90 days. 10% was less than 90 days. And 30%, that's 1 out of every 3 firearms used in crimes, it's less than a year from the date of purchase to the date it's used in a crime. When you put NIBIN and E-Trace together, and all the other technology we have in social media, in DNA, it can help law enforcement to identify patterns in firearms crimes. It gives us insight into how many guns are stolen from vehicles or homes, and how they're used in crimes, how many guns are purchased in straw purchases unlawfully, and then sent to people who aren't allowed to have them under the law. And it allows police to decide where. And I went to a wonderful meeting that Mayor Ginther chaired with the chief today at Columbus Police Department, where they're using this intelligence to try to figure out where to put valuable and limited police resources. But we can do better. And Mayor Ginther's announcement here today of our efforts to form a regional crime gun intelligence center, along with our other partners, is a major step forward in law enforcement in this region. So I want to thank him personally for that. It's also critical on the national level, that intelligence, and that's why the president directed ATF to put out a crime gun trafficking report, the first one in 20 years. And ATF is about to release that report, which will analyze massive amounts of data on crime guns, the most ever compiled in one place, and try to allow people to look at the data and to draw conclusions about how to meet this problem, whether they're policymakers or law enforcement agents or prosecutors. The findings are going to help us to understand how to meet new technologies that the bad guys are using. I talked new technologies the good guys are using. The bad guys have new technology that is endangering us. We need to understand what they are and to meet them. And I'll give you a preview of just one thing that's going to be in that report, since I get to see it a little bit before everybody else. Machine guns have been illegal, largely, in this country for decades, ever since the days of Al Capone in the 30s, the passage of the National Firearms Act in the 1980s, a prohibition. for new machine guns, except for government and the military. That means it's unlawful for most American civilians to own a fully automatic weapon that can fire scores of rounds with just one pull of the trigger. That's what automatic fire does. Those weapons are, as Congress said, unusually dangerous. They're for the military and the government. Yet, individuals have misused technology, including 3D printers, to convert semi-automatic weapons, which are legal, into fully automatic machine guns, which are not. Making, selling, and just having machine gun conversion devices that are new is against the law, full stop. And Congress has said that for many years. Unfortunately, as I have traveled across the nation, talking to law enforcement leaders, I've heard that these machine gun conversion devices are flooding our communities everywhere in the country, including just today here in Columbus. And data from the upcoming crime gun report confirms that. In the last 5 years, the number of machine gun conversion devices that law enforcement agencies reported being recovered has increased by 570%. Let me say that again. In the last 5 years, law enforcement has recovered and reported an increase in these devices, converting firearms to illegal machine guns, of 570%. That is a community danger. It is a danger to law enforcement. And research like that helps the people behind me save lives and understand the threats that they are facing. At ATF, we're doing all we can to try to help them. Technology is a wonderful thing, but when it's misused, we have to understand it. And that is why the ATF has formed the Emerging Threats Unit, a national unit that will focus specifically on these new kinds of technological threats that break the law and try to help amass evidence to bring cases and support our state and local law enforcement partners. Later tonight, I'll be joining the mayor and others on this stage, meeting with people who have been victimized by gun crime, families where this last holiday season there may have been an empty chair at the table or a person not there. All of this technology, it's great to talk about it, but it affects real lives. Real lives in our community are being lost, real lives in our country are being lost. And Mayor, you, Chief, you, all of you, and you in Columbus have ATF's word that we will do our very best with the tools available to help you in your heroic efforts to keep this community safe from senseless gun violence. Thank you. And now I want to introduce Assistant Chief Potts.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, Safety Director Clark. I am First Assistant Chief LaShawna Potts on behalf of Chief Elaine R. Bryant. We welcome ATF Director Distelbach here today. Having Director Distelbach here today is an opportunity, once again, to talk about why collaboration with our federal, state, and local partners is so valuable to the work that we do. Without these partners, our community organizations, and our residents, we would not have experienced substantial decrease of violent crime in Columbus. In just 1 year, as previously stated, we reduced our homicide rate by 33%. We saw a reduction in our felonious assaults by 16.2%, and a reduction in our robberies by 32.1%. These decreases did not occur without laser-focused strategic plans that resulted in strengthening our partnerships, increasing our community engagement, increasing our officer morale, and restructuring our department. This has renewed our legitimacy within the communities that we serve. I am extremely proud of the work that was accomplished last year. However, one violent crime is one too many. Our officers are working diligently to get illegal guns off the streets. With every gun seized, there are more that take its place. In fact, our Columbus police officers confiscated a record number of illegal guns in 2022. We seized 3,356 guns off the street, or roughly 9 guns a day. In 2023, we have already seized over 60 guns. These illegal guns are saturating our communities and getting into the wrong hands, leaving children without parents, families devastated, and communities living in fear. But with the collaborative effort of our local, state, and federal partners, we are bringing violent crime down in Columbus. Our message is clear. If you commit a violent crime in the city of Columbus, we will find you wherever you may hide and bring you to justice. Having officers embedded with agents in the ATF task force have proven to one of the primary factors to our success. Thank you again, Director Dettelbach. We look forward to continuing our collaboration and our partnership. I now would like to introduce Columbus City Attorney Zach Klein.
Well, thank you, Chief Potts. It's great to be here with my friend Steve Dettelbach on this side of me. How you doing? Just really proud of the work that he has done as a former federal prosecutor in the Northern District of Ohio, but also as our nation's leading top cop as it comes to gun enforcement at the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau. You know, public safety is a top priority for the mayor, for myself, for city council, and all of the elected leadership in the city of Columbus. We heard some sobering statistics from Director Dettelbach about the rise and use of technology and 3D printers and converting guns. Assistant Chief Potts talking about the proliferation of guns on our streets, the number of guns that are recovered. You said 9 a day, Chief? 9 a day? That should be sobering to everyone in our community that guns are everywhere. Guns are everywhere. And it's not just one partner, that's whether it's the city attorney's office, the mayor's office, the division of police, or our federal partners that is going to be able to make a dent in gun violence in the city of Columbus. It has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be a collaborative effort. Collaborative within City Hall, with the mayor's office, my office, and city council. Collaborative with the city and the state of Ohio in our partnership with BCI, for example. And of course, collaborative with our partners in federal law enforcement, like the FBI, the ATF, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office. For example, in 2018, the city passed the Weapons Under Disability Ordinance to get those who have domestic violence convictions and possessing guns to give them a maximum penalty. As you may know and recall, under federal law, it's illegal to possess a gun and to have a domestic violence conviction. Under state law in Ohio, it's completely fine. We thought that was wrong. So we filled the gap, we closed the loophole, and created our own ordinance that we're now prosecuting in my office in partnership with the Division of Police of those who have a proven history of violence, usually against an intimate partner or a spouse, and possessing a gun, to get those guns off the street and put those criminals behind bars. In 2019, the city's prosecution division was one of just 6 cities nationally selected by the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges for a firearms Technical Assistance Project, FTAP. It's a grant funding to provide intensive technical assistance in domestic violence and firearms prosecution. It's a partnership. Again, going back to the partnership, it's a partnership with the City Attorney's Office, CPD, the Sheriff's Office, Domestic Court, Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, and both county probation departments to streamline the seizure of firearms from domestic violence suspects and domestic violence offenders. Additionally, as the mayor has stated, we partner with the U.S. Attorney's Office to provide additional Special Assistant United States Attorneys to get illegal guns off the street and put violent, dangerous criminals behind bars. And Mr. Dominguez, we're grateful for that partnership. That has been before my time as city attorney and only growing under Mayor Ginther's leadership in my time as city attorney. Our focus is our work with the U.S. Attorney's Office on prosecuting nearly 24 illegal possession gun cases for individuals prohibited from possessing firearms for domestic violence. I said earlier, it is against the law in this country to possess a gun if you have a domestic violence conviction. And it is a federal crime. And my office is working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to put some of the worst of the worst domestic violence offenders behind bars. And to further our commitment to that partnership, the city is now adding even more sauces to that roster. In addition to our partnerships in the federal level, the City Attorney's Office continues its very active work with the Division of Police and Code Enforcement to shut down some of the worst drug houses and violent properties in the city of Columbus. All of this is done because of partnerships across all levels of government and even within government agencies. So I want to thank each and one of my teammates that are behind me now, because we work together to put violent people who have guns behind bars for a very long time, because that's where they deserve to go. They're a threat to public safety, and they're a threat to our families. At this time, I want to introduce my teammate, Director Clark, with the Division of Public Safety.
First and foremost, I want to thank the women and men of the Columbus Division of Police and all of our partners who are present here with us today and those who are not, for their relentless dedication to making our streets safer because we are working together. I would also like to reiterate, because I think this is important, that this is not about legal, responsible gun ownership. We respect constitutional rights. These efforts are focused on illegal weapons in the hands of people who should not be carrying them. Increasingly, children, as you've just heard today, 2 14-year-olds who have recently been arrested for murder, used in acts of violence against members of our great city. The successes we've seen so far is just the beginning. As I mentioned last week, we recognize the successes, the 30+% reduction in murders from last year, but we recognize that we have much more work to do. We are committed to utilizing every tool at our disposal to make a positive difference in the lives of the residents that we honorably serve. This kind of collaboration, such as represented by the partners who are standing behind me, is what it's going to take to get control of illegal guns in our city. But even with the resources and expertise that we have, we cannot do it without those of you, our residents, at home. We need you in this fight against violence and increasing public safety. If you have information, we ask that you come forward and contact our Division of Police. Every one of us has a role to play in ensuring public safety. I ask that you join with us in this fight, join with us and our partners who are standing behind me in this fight so that we can continue to make Columbus the greatest city to live in the United States. Now I'd like to welcome Mayor Ginther back to the podium.
Thank you, everyone, again for joining us here today. Collaboration is at the root of what we've discussed here, and it's fueling all of our work to combat violent crime here in Columbus. But we need everybody else in our community to step up too. We need parents and caretakers, pastors and faith leaders, teachers, mentors, and neighbors to play a positive role, protect our young people in particular, and do all that we can to bring down the violence and keep our loved ones safe. We're already seeing the impact of growing trust and collaboration between our officers and our residents. What it can do in terms of reducing violent crime and holding violent criminals accountable. This dynamic must continue to broaden and deepen within passage of time. It's worked well for us in the past, and I'm confident it will do the same in the future. And again, I want to thank Director Dettelbach. He's our first permanent director we've had in America since 2015, already been to 23 other states, working with local law enforcement, making a huge difference in this country, and so honored to have him here in Columbus today as we take our partnership to the next level to make sure our community is safer and healthier in the years to come. We'd be happy to take any questions from the press.
In July 2021, a crime gun intelligence center was announced. It sounds like a very similar partnership. How is this one announced today, the regional one, any different?
I'll let the practitioner speak a little bit to that. I'll turn that over to Director Dettelbach and Assistant Chief Potts. We think it's going to be an unprecedented way for us to share information, not just the city. Our hope is to have this be a regional approach because as we learned again today, criminals don't have any respect for jurisdictional boundaries and city limits. This really needs to be an entire regional effort, and we believe the announcement and commitment, there are already follow-up meetings scheduled to make this commitment a reality, but I'll let Assistant Chief Potts or the Director speak to that. Director?
I can say for us, as we continue to fight gun violence in Columbus, having a regional group together where we have neighboring local jurisdictions who once they commit a crime in Columbus, they don't just stop at Columbus. They go into Hilliard, Westerville, and the neighboring communities that surround. It gives us focus where we can share information, not work in silos, and have information that's ready at our fingertips. For us, that's huge because as the director said, when someone commits a crime, usually that gun just doesn't stop there. That gun is used in multiple other violent crimes. And so if we can get that information out, get the DNA, the forensics back quickly, we're saving someone's life from being committed a next violent crime that's happening very soon. So for us, it's huge. I'm not sure of the other thing you were talking about, but for us, having a CJIC here will be extremely valuable, not just for Columbus, but for the neighboring communities that we serve.
So having seen CJICs, that's what they're called, Crime Gun Intelligence Centers, formed around the country, so I can tell you that it takes a significant long-term commitment from a community to do it. And so you start out with what you can do when you start, and then you keep on increasing the capacity of the CJIC as you go on. I think one of the things that's significant about the announcement today was the notion that it's a regional crime gun intelligence center. I know this is by the way, the head of ATF in the state of Ohio, Daryl McCormick. I know from talking with Zach McCormick that in addition to the mayor's and the city's commitment, that BCI is also committed to this effort, as is the Attorney General's office. So there will be, I think, the increasing number of partners who can bring in increased resources and expertise, but also jurisdiction. Because as the mayor said, that's right, the criminals don't respect city limits, county limits, and so law enforcement needs to have that intelligence together. But I will tell you, hopefully, I will be back at some point to talk about the progress we're making and the next big steps that are being taken in crime gun intelligence. It is a new way of targeting the most violent, the worst of the worst, and it takes a lot of time and effort and commitment from really strong, committed, persistent leadership to be able to make it happen.
So this is like a step up or intensification of what the city announced earlier last year.
So I wasn't here, right, at that point. I will just tell you that it seems to me, from having sat in on the Columbus police meeting this morning, the shoot meeting, which is a kind of something that arises out of a CJIC. So every week, there's a meeting of the people in Columbus law enforcement to try and target this as part of the CJIC idea. So a lot is being done, right? I mean, you lower the homicide rate by 30%. That's a pretty significant thing. But you don't have as much of the regional kind of collaboration as I think as you do it, you learn, okay, where can we do more? Where can we do better? What other partners need to come in? So I expect that that's what you'll be seeing, and I know from Zach McCormick that BCI, which is obviously brings an additional capability with respect to regionalism, is also committed to this. So this is going to be an effort where hopefully you and Columbus have gotten the snowball rolling, right? And now it's going to gather steam as additional people come to work together to solve this problem. This is one of these things, and I'm in law enforcement. This is one of these things that is totally consensus driven. I haven't talked to anybody since I started in any hearing I've gone to, in any meeting I've gone to, no matter what place, no matter what kind of government, no matter what party, that doesn't want to take shooters off the street and reduce violent crime and try to use technology to do that. And I think this kind of an effort that Mayor Ginther announced here today and pushing forward to do more and more is vitally important.
Director, maybe a question for Assistant Chief too. Are there stats on ghost guns? Like how many have been confiscated in this city? How do we track that?
I don't know the stats sitting here, but there are numbers that are kept with respect to privately made firearms or ghost guns that are seized as part of violent crimes. I know this sounds a little bit geeky, but the report that we're releasing on Tuesday, which is the Crime Gun Volume 2 of the trafficking report, I think is going to have a tremendous amount of information on this. So it's a little dense, but it's also, you're able to break it down by state. So you'll be able to go to the Ohio tab, and it's all virtual, right? I mean, you can get the phone book if you want, but the better way to do it is online, and click through the data and see where your crime guns came from, what kind of firearms they are. Are they privately made firearms? Are they commercially made firearms? At what percentage? Were they stolen? It is like, as I said, it's the single largest compilation of crime gun information that has ever been amassed in the United States. And I really hope that the media and that policymakers and leaders and academics all dig into it, because it's not meant to answer every question about firearms violence. It's meant to get the experts and the people like you talking about it and asking the next question. So the answer is we do keep track. The last thing I'll say on that is a plug, which is to everybody out there in law enforcement, please report and submit ghost guns, privately made firearms that are found at crime scenes. Sometimes people say, well, this is untraceable firearm, so why should I submit it for the trace? I understand that, but if you do that, then we can't answer your question. We can't track the growing problem and the threat that ghost guns form. But I will tell you this, around the country, not just in Columbus, the proliferation of ghost guns as used in crimes, right, has increased exponentially. Now, people are allowed to make their own firearms in the United States. There's nothing wrong with somebody making a gun under the law for themselves. What you're not allowed to do is be engaged in the business of taking that firearm and selling it to other people. And what you're certainly not allowed to do is to shoot somebody with it, right? They're called ghost guns because they don't have serial numbers. They certainly shoot like real guns and kill like real guns when they're in the wrong hands.
The specific information was shared on ghost guns, Chief?
Yes, we have been tracking ghost guns. So last year we confiscated 75. Thank you.
Mayor Ginther, you mentioned two 14-year-olds are suspected in homicides from this year. Can maybe one of our experts can explain how a 14-year-old can get their hands on these guns?
Well, I'll start and then allow some others to weigh in. There was a staggering statistic that was shared today from part of the team and the partners here that I think since 2017, 1.2 million stolen guns have been used in violent crimes in America. And so one of the biggest issues right now is many folks are carrying. And they may come to a place where they're not allowed to bring a firearm inside. And they haven't necessarily planned ahead, so they leave it in their car. And so the amount of guns that are being stolen out of vehicles, not just around Columbus, but around the country, is pretty staggering when you think about the fact that 1.2 million stolen guns have been used in violent crimes just in the last 6 years. And so I really want to encourage law-abiding gun owners to make sure that their firearms are locked up and stored safely, you know, so that we don't continue to see these stolen guns ending up in the wrong hands. But I'm not sure, Chief or Director, if you want to speak to this anymore.
I think you covered it. What we're finding out is a lot of our cars that are being stolen, as the mayor said, people just don't know that how easy it is for especially our groups and our gangs to go around to the malls, to places that they know that we congregate where we normally don't take our firearms, and they're looking for those doors to open, those trunks to lift up, and that's where they're getting a lot of the weapons that they're using in these crimes. And so as Mayor Ginther said, we implore our citizens, we respect the right to carry weapons. I'm a gun enthusiast myself, but we have a responsibility when we do carry weapons to make sure that they do not fall into the hands of our children or someone who has a criminal intent to use them.
Mayor, this is the second time in as many weeks you've had federal partners here in the city to talk about and work against gun violence. Is this something you've been trying to work on for a while to get these federal partners really on board?
Well, we've been waiting for a permanent director of ATF since 2015, so we're thrilled to have the director in place. Yes, we are doing everything we can. This is our top priority, and we believe the federal government plays a critically important role in helping to make sure this community and communities around the country are safer and healthier, and we're going to continue to lean into that. We announced 3 more things we're doing today. This partnership is going to continue to grow. And I think we're going to see great results around a reduction in violence and having our neighborhoods being safer and stronger because of the federal government stepping up to work with us on these issues. We'll stick around for any more, but thanks for everybody being here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.